This is Jamie calling in from
Wow.
Australia. What's going on, Jamie?
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Well,
Hi.
Saturday morning here, and it's a nice day, and it's good to wake up to you guys. So it's appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah.
Nice.
So I saw from the call screener you want to talk about the link between conspiracy theories and theism. So I kind of want to know what your take is there.
Well, my take is, if you look at a lot of the people that make these conspiracy theory claims, a lot of them are highly intelligent people who just seem to have somewhat of a failed epistemology. And they're also they can be quite egotistical in that, they have to be right. They have to be right about everything. So, they sort of filled with this self-importance, and they have secret knowledge that you can't possibly have. And when you look at, the folks that are making these claims, they quite often will, just sort of shake their heads and go, "Oh, you couldn't possibly know. I've got sources that you don't have," and it's sort of smacks of, I'm a true Christian and you couldn't possibly understand because you've never committed to it, etc.
Yeah, it's this like a conspiracy elitism almost, because it's like, yeah, man, I've been watching Alex Jones since day one. All right, you have no idea the stuff I've seen.
Did you say Alex Jones?
Sorry. Yeah, it's, like that. I've seen that too. I know what you're talking about, Jamie, because it's like, one, not only have I read the stuff that other people talk about and they're full of shit, but also it's like it's like this. It's like if only people thought the way I thought, then they would agree with me. If only they've seen the things that I've seen, then they would agree with me. And I think that's a mindset people have when they jump into this stuff, because if they look at some of the sources for this without kind of the critical thinking necessary to really think about, okay, what are these people actually saying? Where are they getting their information from? I think that's what kind of tricks people. Because I've encountered that online too, Jamie. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, look, it is, and I've got very personal experience with this. My brother, I'm one of four boys, and I'm the youngest. The second eldest basically disappeared out of my life 14 years ago. He was a super intelligent guy, absolutely aced, high school and university. And I kind of looked up to him as a father figure because I basically had an absent father growing up. And then in 2006, I'm now 57, by the way, and in 2006, he just started making these, just things where I sort of went, what? I'm listening to him going, yeah, that doesn't pan out. And it just got worse and worse and worse over time. Fast forward 14 years, he's completely disjointed from the family. And along the way, some of my nephews, etc., cousins were saying, oh, it's okay, just let him go. He's not hurting anyone. And I said, he continues going down this path, he's going to alienate all his children, his grandchildren, his brothers, his entire family, and that's exactly what happened.
If I could interject about this, it's a heartbreaking story, but it's so common though, right? And I think that you're drawing some really good links between. It's very similar because belief systems are created. The reason, the religion. I mean, I'm not even trying to debate religion. I want to be clear about that. And I know we're not on this show, but I just want to say this. Religion was created to create some kind of order, early order for humankind, where we could figure out what we're going to do. It was a way to systematize the world. Like, don't fuck your kids, don't murder people just because you can. Like stuff like that. Whatever the fucking things are, right? And so, belief systems are powerful because whether they're secular, conspiracy theories, or religion, they all cross over with the same thing. And I agree that there's some people who think that they know, but that's usually zealots of any kind, whether they're some kind of terrorist of some kind, with white supremacist terrorists in the United States or anybody. They always believe that they're right because that's a zealousy that happens with this, but they're really just trying to sort things out. Like most people, who believe in conspiracies, even if they argue with them vociferously with you online, are trying to do that to, and you may already know this already, so forgive me, is that they're just trying to reaffirm what they believe and trying to sort out the world. And no amount of arguing or debating or facts or even empathy will necessarily get rid of that immediately. And that's the problem with belief systems. And this doesn't just happen in fucking outliers. This is true in anything. This is true in activism. This is true in anarchism. This is true in communism. There's, electoral systems. Whatever we're in, whatever subculture we're in, we believe it. We believe everything that comes into that, or a lot of that comes into that. And so I am trying to have unless people are trying to harm me or those around me with words and with actions, I try to come at it with an understanding, even if I'm not going to try to convince them or anything. And I also don't fucking debate anybody online ever, because it's a fucking waste of time, unless you just want to do it.
Yeah.
I'll say this too, Jamie. You were talking about your family and stuff, because there is an entire subreddit on Reddit right now called Q Casualties, I think is the name, and it's literally just for family members and for friends of people who have gotten into QAnon and who are trying to cope with that and deal with that and talk with that. And that's another danger that we didn't even talk about earlier, is the interpersonal effects that this has. And I know somebody who a good friend of mine whose mom and sister has both gotten into QAnon and is trying to talk to her about it. And I'm trying to help her out too by saying okay, maybe you should ask her about this and that, because it's so frustrating and it's so sad to see people isolate themselves from everybody else and create this identity that just really harms us in the end and prevents us from having really good conversations about this. What have you done since then, Jamie? Since you kind of figured out this news, I'm curious. Have you continued to have conversations with them? Are you totally cut off, or what's the game plan there?
Look, it's an extremely long story, but the short story is we haven't spoken to him for about a year. He actually ended up in jail because he became a sovereign citizen, which I'm sure you know what that is.
Oh my God!
Yeah. We've talked about sovereign citizenry on this show.
Oh man, I could talk for hours, but
I'm in a state full of them. Just know that. So is he.
Yeah.
And also a thing which I don't know if you would have heard of, called being in the private. So being in the private is like a secret society where you sort of sit outside of the normal world, with all the elite people, and you don't have to follow the rules. So he ended up, he had a very wealthy girlfriend, and he ended up, the family wanted to disconnect from him because they saw him as a threat to their inheritance. So they talked their mother out of hanging out with him anymore. And he ended up getting a restraining order on him, which he broke multiple times, ended up in jail, and then sat in jail for a year because he was right. He wanted to be right about the fact that the law didn't apply to him. And eventually the government jumped through enough hoops to pin him down and get some meds into him, and he came to his senses long enough to get legal aid, got out of there, said there was nothing wrong with him. And, we absolutely lobbied him to stay on his meds because he was the brother of old. He was the Chris that I knew from 2006. And essentially, I was sitting there and I said, well, mate, you're either there's something wrong with you or you're a word starting with C. And, you're going to end up alienating your whole family. And he just went off his meds as soon as he could. And as far as and he lived out in a van out in the.
If I can say that's not a moral failing on this person's part, your brother. It's disappointing and it sounds heartbreaking, but it's not a moral failing on his part. Listen, if you have mental issues and you don't take medication, I know people who don't fucking believe in God or any of that shit or sovereign citizen that deal with that stuff. And so we have to be forgiving to that because there's mental health issues in that. But the other piece, even if Dan disagrees, I'm not trying to argue with him. There is something that is happening. I have paid attention. Listen, I have paid attention. I'm not saying I have fucking secret information. I got no secret information, but I've paid attention to right-wing movements since 1985 all across the world. I have fought against them. I've been an anti-fascist and Antifa since 1985 in different forms, inside the systems, outside the systems. I've always fought against fascism. And one thing that has come up that is dragging people down further than ever is this right-wing media ecosystem that operates like a cult, that tells you to not pay attention to the outside media, and that everything that only takes place in that mirror of self-reflection is the truth and reality. And it's drawing people in, maybe, I can't say, but maybe like your brother, who get affected by this. They are not, they're getting what Kellyanne Conway called an alternate facts. They're not just getting different interpretation in the news. It's a whole different news that tells them that the world that they're inhabiting is right. And people like fucking Alex Jones and Little Green Footballs and Daily Wire and all of these fucking places are responsible for it. I put it in, because I live in Austin, I put it at the foot of Alex Jones for creating this. Yeah. For creating a lot of this. That motherfucker makes $25 million a year so that people like your brother end up suffering. And so he can fucking sell his supplements and fucking lie about everything and criminalize. 3 weeks ago on his radio show, he was calling for the murder of Antifa protesters in the streets. Mm-hmm. Murder of that. How does that fucking happen? That's not free speech. Fuck you, Alex Jones.
Yeah, and I agree with that stance there. Fuck Alex Jones, not a good dude. Yeah, it's all really bad. JB, we have to get to some other callers here, but I hope what we've said here is at least comforting to you in some way. I wish you well, and I hope when dealing with your brother that things work out for you. But thanks for calling the show, and thanks for giving us your take on stuff. Really appreciate you calling in tonight.
Be well, man.